Hello everybody, this is Brett Lonsdale from Lightning Tools and welcome to the final webinar in the SPFx webinar series. If you've been tuned in for the last 6 weeks or so, we've been doing a sort of weekly or sometimes bi-weekly episode of a webinar to do with one of our SPFx products. So this week we're going to be talking about the data viewer. A couple of weeks ago we talked about DeliverPoint, our permissions management tool, and we've also covered other subjects such as our Lightning Conductor web part, which is an SPFx content aggregation tool, as well as Social Squared, which is a discussion board tool, and so on. So these are all available. If you missed them, you can go to lightningtools.com and click onto webinars from the main menu, and you'll be able to watch those back. And that's exactly where the recording of this one will be available as well after it's been edited at the end of today. Hopefully I won't need to edit it, we'll see. So yeah, the data viewer is a subject for today. Before we start, I'll just talk a little bit about Lightning Tools to introduce us. So we are a company based in the UK. We've been providing different tools and web parts for Microsoft SharePoint, of course, initially on premises, but now online as well. We've kind of done the classic online SharePoint tools, and now we've produced a series of different SPFx tools for SharePoint Online Modern, as well as Microsoft Teams as well. And those products cover things like the content aggregation tool, which is known as the Lightning Conductor, the discussion forum tool, which is known as Social Squared, the list form design tool, which is known as Lightning Forms, and also some of the other products as well, like business connectivity services tooling, such as our BCS MetaMan product, SharePoint chart, and also the data viewer and DeliverPoint. It's the data viewer, obviously, that we're going to be talking about today inside this webinar. So let's jump in and have a look at why you may want to sort of consider the data viewer webinar for your SharePoint Online experience, or also Microsoft Teams as well. So basically what the data viewer does is it provides you with the ability to very easily, very quickly have the ability to connect to content that may reside inside a SharePoint list, or also some form of external data source as well. And some of those external data sources we'll talk about, but things like Microsoft SQL databases, or maybe OData services, Excel documents, and things like that are some of the different data sources that we can connect to very easily and display those results inside of a SharePoint site, or also inside of Microsoft Teams as well. And if you're using SharePoint on premises, we also have the data viewer available as a full trust product. Also, you could also use the SPFx version as well that you're going to be seeing today. So yeah, the benefit of the data viewer is you can connect to these external data sources, and the way that you can report on them can either be as a grid view or also as a chart. So so it's your option. You can take a grid view and style the data in as far as selecting the different columns that you want to see, how you want to group by those, if you want calculated columns as well, if you want to create aggregate functions, conditional formatting, and that type of thing. These are all the sorts of things that you can do with your data to really make it stand out. So if you're looking at business data from one of the silos inside your organization, you'll be able to spot key trends, or you'll be able to be alerted to issues with inside the data very easily, and of course get to the root cause of those issues, or spot those trends more easily. So you can report on the data inside a grid view. You can also display charts as well, as I mentioned, and both of those can be done inside of SharePoint Online web part pages, also Teams tabs, and you can also, rather than just adding the data viewer as a Teams tab, you could also add a SharePoint page that contains the data viewer web part on it, or multiple data viewer instances, and display those inside of Teams as a dashboard. So the problem that we're resolving here with the data viewer is basically that inside organizations, we've got lots of different pockets or silos of data dotted around. Some of them might be in the form of Excel documents. They might be databases that could be in SQL, or other data sources like Oracle. You might also have some cloud systems, things like HubSpot, or account systems like Sage, that type of thing. And basically, we've got all of these different silos of information, but we're working inside of SharePoint daily, or we're working inside of Teams daily. So one of the benefits here is that we can bring that data, a live view, a real-time view of that data, directly to where you're working. So all of your team members can see the same data, or those team members that you want to be able to see that data will be able to see that data. So some of these things have kind of disappeared from SharePoint over the years. So we used to have something called Excel services, as an example, in SharePoint on premises, where you could display Excel documents as web parts, or you could also display charts from Excel documents inside a web part as well. And we've also got things like business connectivity services, which allows us to view some of the external data inside of things like external lists. But both of these things have it kind of stayed static over the years, but the data viewer hasn't. The data viewer has evolved and allows you to really quickly and easily be able to connect to some of this content and display it inside of your SharePoint environment. So I'm sure we've kind of all got pockets of data like that inside our organization. Some of it may be paper-based even, and what we're going to look at here is how we can make your life easier, make you spend less time looking at data and maybe getting that highlighter pen out and circling figures, as you see on the screen here, to actually seeing the live data reported directly where you're working in SharePoint and Teams. So what the data viewer provides you with is not just some nice charts and some nice grid views that highlight the key data, but also a very flexible but simple to use experience when you're actually configuring the data viewer as well. It's not something that you need to be a BI expert to do. If you could create an Excel document, or if you can create a chart in Excel, you could certainly be able to configure the data viewer to access some of your external data as well. So the data viewer can be used really easily by site owners or designers inside of SharePoint, or team owners inside of Teams, to highlight the key information from your business, and across multiple different data sources as well that we'll be taking a look at. And you can highlight that key data using some of the simple conditional formatting controls, or using calculated columns to display results. Again, you could also use charts as well if you wanted to, in both of those platforms. So the supported data sources that we offer, of course, I've mentioned it a few times, is Microsoft Excel documents, and you don't need anything like Excel services to do that. As long as the Excel document is residing inside a document library somewhere in SharePoint, then we can basically connect to it. We can navigate to it easily, and we can display the data inside the data viewer and style it. We could also connect to a SQL Azure database. So if you've got any line of business systems that are hosted inside of SQL Azure, we can connect to those easily directly. We can also connect to SharePoint lists, and these lists could reside anywhere inside your tenant. As long as you have permissions to that list, you'll be able to connect to it, and you'll be able to build reports on that list, or charts on that list. We also do support business connectivity services, and one of the reasons for that, you may be confused by this, but if you've got business connectivity services, your immediate thought is, well, let me go ahead and use the external list to display my data. But if you look at the external list now, it's really not moved on from years ago when it was first created, and we're surrounded by all these modern lists that have responsive forms and so on inside of SharePoint Online now, whereas the external list, that hasn't moved on. It's still very static in the look and feel. So this data viewer is actually giving a great alternative to using external lists. You can style them better, they're actually more responsive, and also you can do things like conditional formatting and things like that without actually using any code, which would be the requirement for the external lists. We can also use OData. So if you do have anything that is perhaps an on-premises data source, like an Oracle database or anything like that, then using Visual Studio Code, it's very easy to, within a few lines of code, expose that data as an OData service. And that way, it makes it available to the cloud, and you'll be able to consume that OData service using the data viewer and display the results, again, inside of SharePoint or Teams. We can also use web part connections as a data source. So one of the benefits here is to actually connect to some other SPFx web parts that allow it. Some of our products actually allow this, things like our Lightning Conductor, where we can aggregate different SharePoint lists. So we could build an aggregated view of maybe task lists or contact lists or announcements and so on coming from different sites and different site collections, even hub sites and associated sites. And we can take those results and connect those to the data viewer, and that would allow us to build a chart on that aggregated content. So it's not just a single list that you can work with, but combined with the Lightning Conductor, you could actually build charts on aggregated content as well. And then the features that we have. So if you're building a data grid, you can go through and select the different columns that you want to see. You can apply data formatting to those columns. So if you wanted something to be displayed as a currency or as a date, we can do that. You've also got the ability to create calculated columns as well. So if there's perhaps a calculation that you want to perform, such as a concatenation or maybe some form of numerical calculation, you could do that as a separate column and display that column within inside the view. You've also got the conditional formatting and filters, of course, and grouping. You can have aggregate functions and also webpack connections between multiple instances of the data viewer. So if you're connecting to a relational database, for example, you could actually mirror that one-to-many join that you have inside your relational database with the data viewer. And we're going to see that today. We're going to go through and do exactly that. So we'll be able to see the categories of products from the Northwind database, and as we click onto a category, we'll be able to display the products that belong to that category. And this could be used for all sorts of purposes, like customers and orders or whatever it might be. If there's a one-to-many join, we'll be able to reflect that using the data viewer and drill down into that information. Even if you're connecting to the same data source, you could use that for sort of summary detail scenarios as well. So it could be the same table, but maybe we display a list of customers and you click on that customer and then you want to see the customer address. So that kind of thing can also be done by connecting multiple instances of the data viewer. And we can also use webpack connections for filtering as well. And this is especially useful when you are building a dashboard. We can consume a filter value from the environment, such as the query string URL or the page name or something like that, or even webpack connections such as the Lightning Filters webpack, which is a free product that you can download. So these are the things that we're going to see today for the data grid, and we're also going to see some charts. So we can build 2D or 3D charts. You can have all sorts of different styles of charts, so column and line charts and bar charts and area charts, etc. So we'll have a good look at some of those, and they can be single series or multiple series charts, and you can customize every single part of them. So every color, every line thickness, you name it, you can go through and apply those properties very easily using the data viewer. And even if you're in chart mode, you can also consume connections for your data source or also for filtering as well, which we'll see. So we'll jump into a demo, and what you're going to see first of all is a simple example of connecting to an Excel spreadsheet. We're going to take some data in that Excel spreadsheet and simply display it as a chart. So we can display that chart with inside of SharePoint Online. And we're then going to get into some more sort of relational database type stuff, and I'm going to use an OData service for that reflects a relational database. So we'll build several different data grid views with some conditional formatting. I'll show you the different webpack connections that we can build, and also the filters as well when working with products such as the Lightning Filter webpack. And we'll also consume some data using webpack connection from the Lightning Conductor, and we're going to finish by displaying all of that stuff as a dashboard inside of Teams. So if people prefer to use SharePoint as the mechanism for seeing this dashboard, they can, but equally you could display it inside of Teams as well for those that experience or prefer that platform. So let's jump into SharePoint, and what you should see is a modern SharePoint page, and I've just created a page a moment ago before this webinar started called Data Dashboard. And what we're going to do is just go in and edit the page first of all. And what I like to do if I'm working with the data viewer is to actually customize the row configuration so we can have two columns, and this allows me to have some sort of charts side by side and that sort of thing, and reflects more of a dashboard rather than just having one column and lots of different data viewers one after the other. So what we can do is just hover over the plus icon in either of these two webpack zones, and just start typing data, and you'll see the Lightning Data Viewer highlighted. And just in case you're wondering, there is actually a out-of-the-box chart tool called Quick Chart. And if you've used that, it very much relies on you creating some static data. So it's all fine if you just want to put a few figures together to make a point in a meeting or something like that. But what we're looking at here with the data viewer is live, real-time connected data. So as the Excel document changes or as the underlying data source changes, people create new items, etc. That's going to be reflected inside the data viewer immediately. So we've got one instance on the page, and what we're going to do is just go ahead and click the configure button, and that takes me into the configuration dialog. And on the left hand side you've got 4 blades. So we've got web part, data source, columns, and display, and each of these will effectively remain the same bar the data source. So the data source is the only one that will change, and that changes based on the type of data source that we are connecting to. So of course, if I'm selecting SharePoint list here, then the data source blade actually gives me a list of site collections, and we can drill into those site collections right the way down to selecting a particular list or library that we want to connect to and display inside this web part. And that's similar for Excel. So if I select Excel, which we will be doing in a moment, I get that same sort of tree view, and we can drill into the different sites and in the site collections and find a library that contains the Excel document that I want to connect to. So we don't need to remember any paths or anything like that. We've also got business connectivity services as a data source, and if you're connecting to that one, then you just need the namespace and the type name. So this is usually going to be something like Northwind as the namespace, and then employees as the type name, but that will be discoverable inside your business connectivity services admin pane in SharePoint. And then we've also got SQL Azure. So if we're connecting to SQL Azure, then you just put in the server name, and that's available in SQL Azure. You can get that connection information, and then how we want to authenticate with that, and then select the database and the tables that we want to connect to. And we've also got OData as well, which of course is going to expect a OData service URL. So the data source tab will reflect whatever it is we're connecting to. So we're going to start off nice and simple with an Excel document. And here is the display provider. So this is where I make that choice. Do I want to build a chart here, or do I want to build a grid view? And we're going to start off with a chart. So I've selected the charts view, and there's just a couple of other properties on this tab that allow me to limit the number of items that I'm going to display if I want to, and I can also set an automatic refresh interval. So if we wanted the chart to poll the data every few seconds or something like that, we can do to avoid page refreshes. So entirely up to you how you want to do that. So in here I've got a list of, like I say, different site collections that I can connect to. So here under the data viewer, my Excel document actually resides in a completely different site collection to the one that I'm currently in, and it's inside this document library here. So I can select that document library, and that allows me to select a Excel file, and there's one here called book.xlsx. So I'm basically going to go through and select that, and in the drop down it gives me the sheets that contain data. So I'm going to choose sheet 1, and it's automatically given me the cell range of the data that is there at the moment. So we'll go through with that cell range and hit save. So it couldn't be easier. We're now connected to that Excel document, and as I go to the columns tab, I can now see the columns or the headings inside that range of data coming from Excel. So we've got the month column, the sales revenue, the cost of sales, and the profit. So all I need to do is do a select all. It will take all of those columns, and if we want to, we can also provide filters. So if we just wanted to filter on a particular month or something like that, we could. But otherwise I'll leave that as it is. And I can also add a calculated column in here as well. So perhaps if we wanted to add sales tax or something like that, we could do, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. So on the display tab, notice we've already got a chart, and that is linked to the live data. This is exactly how my chart will look based on the data. It's not just a picture of a chart, it's actually linked to my data here. And what we can do is you can see the three columns that contain numeric values of some sort. So we've got sales revenue, cost of sales, and profit. Now, this is not my choice of colors. It's just going to randomly choose some colors for me each time I go to build a chart. So what I can do is I can go through and click onto the configuration cog icon against each of the available series, and then we can go through and select, well, what type of display do I want for that series. So I'm going to switch this from line to a column chart, and I'm going to choose a color. Now, since I'm in SharePoint, I'm going to go with the theme color. So that means that every time anybody changes the theme on my SharePoint site, my chart will reflect that theme, and it's not going to stand out like a sore thumb. So it'll pick up the blue in this case, but if I was to change that, then it's going to change accordingly as well. Notice we can also add trend lines and change the orientation to be horizontal rather than vertical. So there's a couple of options there. So as I just save that, we've now got some nice blue columns showing the sales revenue for each of those months. Now the cost of sales, that's fine as a line, but maybe I could make that a bit of a deeper lime green just to make it stand out a little bit more. We could change the line width and the point size and that type of thing, again, to really sort of customize that, make it stand out as best as it can. And then finally, we've got the profit. So I'm going to go with maybe a sort of pink, if I can, pink over there, there we go. So that might sound terrible, but I'm going to go with a pink. And with that pink, I'm going to change it to be an area. So this will become opaque, and I can change the opacity if I want to, but that just gives that sort of nice sort of shaded pink background to the chart, so we can then see the profit. So that's the sort of display, and we can go into some chart settings here. So we could give it a title. We could say sales revenue or whatever we want to put in there as the chart title. We can choose where we want the legend to appear. So you've got several different choices there, and you can change the background color of your chart. You can change the height, the width. Basically, everything is configurable in there. So I'm happy with that. I'm just going to save the properties, and notice that we've now got our chart appearing on the page, linked straight to that Excel document. And we've got some headings in here like refresh data, so we can manually refresh the data if we want to. You can also export the data, and there's a link to our documentation, things like that. All of these properties can be shown or hidden if you do or don't want to be able to see those. Okay, so that's our first look at the data viewer for connecting to that Excel document. What I'm going to do on the right hand side here is a little bit different. So we're going to add another instance of the data viewer. And again, I'm going to configure this one, but this time we'll connect to an OData service. And the OData service that I'm going to use, there's a great sample one that you can use. If you go to odata.org, and it actually gives you some great getting started videos and basic tutorials and things like that on how to expose your data as OData. So if you do have any on-premises data that you want to connect to, you can follow this, and it will help you to create your own OData service. But as we hover over developers here and click the drop down, there's some reference services, and there's just some useful ones that you can play around with. And I'm going to work with the Northwind database. For those of you that might remember that, there's good old Nancy DeVolio and so on that works for Northwind, and they sell products like marmalade and chai tea and things like that. So I'm going to take the OData service URL that is going to expose all these different tables and views. So we've got things like the customers, the employees, the orders, the order details, products, etc. All coming from this database. So I'll take the service URL, and back to the SharePoint page. What we're going to do is first we'll create a grid view, and we'll go to the data source tab here, and we'll paste in the service URL, and I'll click onto load entities. Because this is a sample one, it's not secure, it doesn't require any credentials, but if you do require credentials for your OData service, then you've got the ability to add those as well. And we're just going to go through and connect to the categories table in this case. So I've got categories, and when we go to the columns tab, notice I can go through and select the columns again, just like we did before with the chart. I don't need to see picture, we'll just have the category name and the description. And under the display tab, we can do things like the data formatting and the grouping and things like that, and we'll do a little bit more of that in just a moment. Now, the only thing that you're going to see me do differently on this one is I'm going to select this option to allow selecting rows, and I'm selecting that because I want to be able to select a row that contains a category and have that fire the connection to the consuming web part, which is going to actually load the products for me. So there we go, we've got that data displayed. So along with the category name and the description. Now immediately below this web part, I'm going to go through and insert another instance of the data viewer. And we're going to do a similar thing. We're going to connect to the OData service again. It's actually going to be the same OData service in this case. So we'll just paste that in. But this time I'm going to bring back products. And from the products table, I'm going to grab the product name. I'll have the category ID, which I actually need to filter on. And we're going to display things like the unit price, units in stock, units on order, and if it's discontinued or not. Okay, so we've got those columns selected. And this time I will show you how to create a calculated column. So I'm going to add a calculated column in here, and I'm just going to call this sales tax. So if we want to see what the sales tax is going to be, I can set the column type as a double, and I'll take the unit price, drop that in here, and we're just going to multiply that by 0.2. Okay, so we've got that as an additional column now that's displayed at the top, and I can drag that and drop that to wherever I want it to appear. So I'll put it immediately beneath the unit price. So under the display tab, again, this is where we can go through and apply colors and formatting and things like that, and we'll do more of that in just a moment. I'm just going to hit save here, and there we go. We've now got some data coming back. So notice how we've got all of the products from all of the categories, and we've also got the unit price, sales tax, and units in stock in here. So what I first of all want to do is really make some of this data stand out, and you can either work here in the grid view by going to the column settings, or you can also go back to that configuration dialog depending on which you prefer. So on the formatting for the sales tax, notice that we've got multiple decimal points after that, and I've got no decimal points sometimes for the unit price. So we're going to sort that problem out first of all by just going into the formatting here. Sorry, beg your pardon. We're going to go into the data formatting, which is here under more. So I want to format that as a currency. So as I save that as a currency, it's now better formatted. So if you were using the external list for BCS, you'd need to do that in XSLT, believe it or not. And then here we've got the units in stock. So what I want to do for that one is highlight when stock is getting low. So we're going to go into the formatting here, and we're going to add our rule, which is units in stock is less than, let's say, 10. So if stock falls below 10 on any of these items, then we really want it to stand out. And we can highlight the entire row in a color if we wanted to be dramatic. And you can pick those colors either for the forecolor or the background color, or you can select a nice sort of discrete icon. I tend to like the discrete icon. So I'm going to choose an icon in here, maybe one with a little exclamation point, and we could make that orange or something. We can choose the size, where we want that to appear. So I'm going to have it maybe on the right hand side of the value, and we'll hit save. So now we can see we've got that little icon bringing my attention to those products where we're falling low in stock. So I don't have to read the data. It's great that I can just glance at that and see where the stock is. So that's one thing you can do. Or if you prefer, if we clear that conditional formatting, we can also use data bars. So in here, we can get rid of the condition completely, and under the data bars, we can say, well, the maximum stock is only ever going to be 100, and we'll pick up the theme color again, and I'll just save that. And now we've got some little data bars, so we can kind of visually see where the stock is for those. So this is showing all of the products currently, but what I'm going to do is change it so that it only shows the products within the category that I'm going to select. So in here, we'll hit the configuration icon, go back to configure, and under the columns tab, next to the category ID, I'm going to click this filter icon in here, and we're going to use this little connect value to data source option. So rather than giving a static value to filter on, like category 1 or category 2 that doesn't change, we'll hit the connection icon, and I'm going to connect this to the previous data viewer instance and work with the selected items. And that's why I turned on that select row capability. So we'll connect to the selected items, and it's the category ID that I want to pass through to this web part. So we'll save all of that. So you'll see again, all of the products are being displayed. And let me just close this side panel, give us a bit more space. So if I was interested in beverages, obviously, I could go through and select that, and we can see, fairly disappointed there's chai and chang. So we can see those products, how many of those we've got in stock, and the price of them, and so on. So maybe I also want to include some other things like meat. So we can go through and select meat, and I can see what meat is coming in for those as well. And we can select as many of those as we want, and it's going to keep on loading that data into the table, so we can really drill into it. So imagine that we had a list of customers. From our CRM system, we could select a customer, and then we could see perhaps the quotations that have been sent to that customer, or the orders that have been sent to that customer, or something like that visually there on our SharePoint page. And if you want, that doesn't even have to be a grid view of data. This could also be another chart as well that's consuming that same connection. So yeah, why not go and do that? Let's add the data viewer again. So we could configure this back to the OData service. Again, build a charts view, drop in that service URL, and in here we could point it right back at that products, and we could have the product name, and maybe we just want to know the units in stock and the units on order. So we could select those. So they're displayed in a chart. We could very easily just make that a column. I'm not going to care too much about the colors this time. Maybe I am a little bit, except really is not good. Okay, there we go. So we've got some better colors. So we can see those that are on order, etc. And save that one. But actually what I'm going to do is just jump back here to the category ID again. And that can go and get the category ID also from that web part. So there we go. We're not seeing, we're only seeing the categories that I selected. So as I change that, it doesn't just display the grid view here, it's giving me a chart that reflects that data as well. So we can see all of that information on the page there. So that's a couple. I'm just going to build one more with an OData service in here. So we'll go and add the data viewer one more time and configure it. So back to an OData service, and again, it's going to be a charts view. And just wanted to show you here how it's not just tables that we can connect to, but there's also all these views as well. So we've got things like summary of sales by quarter, or summary of sales by years, and things like that, or summary of sales by category, etc. So we can choose all sorts of different ones here. So let's just do a summary of sales by quarter. And here we've got the ship date, order ID, and subtotal. So I'm just going to go with these two columns, and under the display here, notice that we've got all of these different dates. Now, the reason for showing you this one is the fact that we can do grouping bys. So if I do a group by, I can actually select each of these different periods. So it could be quarter, or equally I could group it by month, and so on, and make the choice how I want to group that data there. And again, that could be perhaps better off as a column in the theme color here. Okay, so we've now got that nicely grouped and also displayed on the page. Okay, and in fact, we'll just do one more, because I've realized I've not shown you some of the other charting capabilities. So we'll just add the data viewer again. And select the charts view, I'm going to drop in that URL. Okay, so this time what I want to see is a little bit different. We're going to choose the customers, and under the column tab here, I'm going to choose the maybe the customer ID, and we're also going to choose the country, because what I want to know is whereabouts in the world are my most customers. So in here, it doesn't make sense at the moment. We're going to go ahead and group by country, and we're going to display this as a pie chart. And okay, well, that was my aim anyway. Let me just, seems to have frozen up on me. Just bear with me 1 second. Let's try that one more time. So we'll choose customers, and once again, the customer ID and the country. It's not liking it for some reason. Maybe it's the data source. Okay, let's do. There we go. Anyway, it's not what I wanted to show you, but it is a pie chart nonetheless. So yeah, you can see how we've got pie charts as well. So we can show the units on order, and yeah, I've only got the category ID, which doesn't make too much sense at the moment. But yeah, there's a pie chart. We can go into the chart settings. We can add if we wanted to make this a donut, we can actually set a whole size in the middle. We can make it 3D and things like that if we want to. So we can save that. Again, change each of the different colors and drop that onto the page. And there's our pie chart. Okay, so we've got a bit of a dashboard going on, and what I'm going to do is just republish that page, because now what I want to show you is how we can get this page into Teams. So as we go to the Teams interface, I can go and add a tab. Now, this is not our product. I'm just going to show you. We're going to connect to SharePoint in here. Okay, and this will list for me the SharePoint pages that belong to this current site. And this is the one that we created called Data Dashboard. So I'm just going to select that and hit Save. And that's all we need to do to display that exact same dashboard here inside of Microsoft Teams. So again, we've got the data displaying the Excel document, the connections, everything works exactly the same, obviously, because it's just displaying a SharePoint page. That pie chart was just doomed. And then down in the bottom left-hand corner, I've got my sales per month as well. So all of that's coming from just the SharePoint page. But what we can also do is add a new tab, and notice that Data Viewer is actually its own product for Teams as well. So I can go through and select that and click onto Add and hit Save. So that will drop the Data Viewer as a tab here inside of Teams. And this will allow me to configure a single instance of the Data Viewer as its own tab. So exactly the same options. Again, we can connect to whatever it is we want to connect to. So perhaps if we just go against the Excel document and display our charts view again, we'll come down to the Data Viewer, select our Excel document and the range of data. And there we go, we've got our chart, and I can just save that, and I've got a tab with that single chart on there. And that completely reflects any sort of dark mode options or anything like that that you may also set inside your Teams environment. So you can control all of that as well. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you today. So Oh, in fact, sorry, one other thing. So we didn't do the web part connections with the filtering. So that is one other thing that we can do. So what we'll do is just edit the page here. Okay, and I'm going to add two products here. One is called Lightning Filters. So we're just going to drop that on, and we're also going to add another instance of the data viewer. So just very quickly, we'll bring back some data, so maybe customers this time. So we've got some customers being displayed here, and what I can do with the Lightning filters is go through and choose what type of filter I want to provide. So this could be like a choice filter or something like that. It could be a text filter or a people filter, and you can go through and manage all of your different options. So we could have like United Kingdom, and of course you've seen how you can create multiple choices by using other web parts as well for this. And we could have Germany and so on, all in there. Okay, so I'll just start off with a couple, so you've got the idea, and then in the data viewer, we'll just go back to configure, and under the columns tab, we can go against the country and grab the filter from Lightning Filters. So there's the Lightning Filter web part, and we're connecting to the filterable value. So now I can go through and save that. So in here, we can select a drop down, choose a country, and see all the customers that we have inside that particular country. And that one filter web part could serve all of the web parts on the page effectively. You can connect it to many web parts that are going to consume that same connection. Okay, so with that, I'm going to open up for some questions. So if anybody does have any questions, what you can basically do is raise your hand, and I can unmute you and you can ask your question, or there is also the questions panel where you can type a question and I'll read it out and hopefully provide an answer. Just whilst we're waiting, there is a couple of links here if you wanted to download it for SharePoint Online or also for SharePoint on premises. So basically, if you go onto lightningtools.com, under the products menu, you'll be able to navigate to the data viewer, and there is a link to download the trial. Okay, so there is one question that's come through. So can I make a chart based on multiple SharePoint lists? Yes, I did in fact mention that. Yeah, that is one thing that we can do. So let's just briefly show you that. So again, I'm just going to jump into this page. This page is actually getting a little bit busy. So let me just add a new page here. We'll leave that one. Okay, so this was using the Lightning Conductor. So this is another product of ours, the Lightning Conductor. This allows me to do some content aggregation. So what we could do, for example, is I could bring back planner plans or planner tasks from Microsoft Graph, or so this is not just building charts actually on multiple SharePoint lists. You can build charts on graph entities effectively by using the Lightning Conductor to bring back that data from the Microsoft Graph. So things like planner tasks and OneDrive items and messages and things like that. Or we can also go against lists as well. So in this case, I'm going to bring back some tasks from my current tenant and display those in a grid view. So all of that using the Lightning Conductor. So we should get that data loaded. So there's a whole bunch of tasks here. And what I could do is then add the data viewer onto the page, configure that. And this is where we can connect the data viewer to another web part on the page. So I choose the current page data source, and choose the charts view. And under the data source tab, I then get to configure a connection to the Lightning Conductor and bring back all of the retrieved items. So I can leave this one blank, so we're going to bring back everything. And now under the columns tab, these are all we've got the task title and the task status and the priority and things like that as an example. So yep, we've got that. And if I wanted to build a chart, what we could do is just have the status and the ID. Okay, and we're going to group by the status, and I'm going to count the IDs. There we've got a decent pie chart, and I can now hit save, and there we go. We've now got a pie chart showing me how many in progress tasks there are in my tenant, how many are completed, how many are not started, etc. All based on the fact that we're aggregating that content. And if you didn't want to see this web part doing all the background work, you can actually hide that web part on the page as well. So you wouldn't necessarily need to see that. You could just see the chart, and just the Lightning Conductor is doing all that computation in the background there. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't see any other raised hands or any other questions. So at that point, I'm just going to thank you for attending the webinar. And if you do want to download a trial, please feel free to do so. And if you've got any requirements for something more specific than what you've seen today, then you can also, from the product page, arrange a demonstration as well. And we'd be happy to do something that's very tied to your needs. All right, many thanks for attending, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.